Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop with another customer bike build video. Although this isn't really a build as such, but I wanted to show you this bike because there are some interesting features on it, and I wanted to explain the rationale behind why did I recommend this particular bike for this particular customer. So as you can see, this is a Trek Speed Concept SLR 7, and the main kind of point of this bike, it's obviously a triathlon bike. So the customer, in this case, relatively seasoned triathlete, a woman aged around 40, is going to take on, well, long distance events on it. And because of her height, this really isn't an easy task to find a bike that suits geometry wise. And also I just find that there aren't really that many good triathlon bikes on the market at this point that would also be at kind of a reasonable price point, which this one I think is. So yeah, so let's start with the geometry first. Now I know this from my own experience, where it's pretty clear that if you are on the short side, it's kind of hard to find a bike that allows you to go low enough its stack, so then you have some adjustment. You know, usually it happens that if you can create separation between yourself and the bike, then it's better aerodynamically speaking, and it's just good to have options. Because, for example, when I started out on the Shift TT, which by the way is an amazing bike, as you have probably seen in the last video, with the previous customer build, it's just really high in, or really tall in stack. And if you're low at your saddle height, you might not even need to be short as such, but some people just have short legs or short saddle height for some reason, and that creates a problem. So this is why this bike was chosen, because I just found that from the options we have available and the ones that are also catering to triathlon needs, this one was the best. And also, while the Trek cockpit isn't amazing in terms of adjustability, because let's be frank, none of the off-the-shelf options are on any frame, on any bike that I came across. Factory options usually suck. This doesn't suck as bad as most of them. So yeah, that was another consideration to be made. And normally we would take a frame set of a bike like this and build it up according to specifications. However, with Trek, at least here in Slovakia or in Europe, maybe in general, that's not really an option, because we've sold quite a lot of these bikes in the past, and at first I wanted to build it up as a frame set, but the bad thing with Trek is that there's no frame set as such. You can buy the frame, which really only consists of the frame and fork, and every single other thing you have to specify and buy separately. And because it was the first time working on such a bike, I didn't want to make an expensive mistake, so I ordered the full bike for the customer. But even if I calculated, you know, all the bits that we would potentially need, and really you need everything. You need a base bar, you need every single riser, every single bolt, every single washer that is on the bike. You need to order those separately, and if you add up the price, it becomes, well, essentially almost the same price as this full bike with Ultegra Di2 already on it. So it really just makes no sense. And I can see a reason why Trek do that. It's, well, to get a bigger sale in selling you the complete bike. But on the other hand, for example, from the time trial version, which is a different frame slightly, there's no option of a complete bike. So yeah, not my favorite way of doing this, but Trek kind of forces my hand here. So anyway, this is the bike we have in the smallest size, which is, well, small. It's size small. And weirdly though, Trek offer as many as 4 different base bar options, and for some twisted reason, this is a size small frame, as I said, the smallest version, and it comes with the tallest base bar, which is a kind of a choice I don't really understand, but the rest of the bike is really quite good. So let's start again in the beginning. And before I talk about the spec itself, really it's just a stock Trek SLR 7 with an upgraded crank, pedals, and what another thing we're going to upgrade are the tires, but more on this later. So if you maybe come a bit closer, then we can have a look at the base bar and the front end of the bike. So here, as I said, we have the base bar which curls upwards. There's also a flat one and one that goes downwards, and another one that is the time trial specific one. So yeah, you can see why it's better to buy this bike as a complete unit, because it's just a bit too complicated in this sense. So then we have really quite a clever system in terms of the risers. So it's something very similar that we have done for my Colnago last year when I was experimenting with the position. So it's kind of a two-part system when it comes to the risers. So you have one base option, which is threaded. So you have bolts threading into it from the bottom. This clamps it on the base bar, and then on the set clamping it from the top. And in between you can sandwich extra risers. So here's your fine adjustment for the stack height and also the angle. Another thing about the angle, a lot of stock bikes don't have angle adjustment built into their base bar, but here it's again really quite clever, because this little carrier part which sits on top of the risers is tilted at 7 degrees. So you have already 7 degrees of rise built in, and then you can add an extra 7 for a total of 14, which is maybe less than most of you would like to use, but still, as I said, it's better than quite a lot of the stock options. So and of course you can go flat, although I don't see a good reason why you'd want to do that, because there's also a negative 7 degree wedge that kind of evens the whole thing out. But I think this is the most reasonable setup that you can use as standard, at least. Then we have also 3 different kinds of these carriers. So this one is the short one, and then there's a medium one and the forward opposite one, which basically adjusts your reach for the pads and also the extensions themselves. Weirdly though, or at least as far as I know, there aren't any other different extension types here, but yeah, this is a relatively modern solution, so I kind of like that. Another neat feature of them is that they're actually not round, which disqualifies you from basically using any other aftermarket option. But on the other hand, it's much easier to adjust because they slide in and they're at a fixed position, so you don't need to mess around with, you know, having them angled the same way and extended the same way. So that I find much easier. But again, there's the added complication of having 3 different combinations of these on top of the risers. Also, this probably isn't a bike for people who ride quite a lot of stack height, because we built some last year in L and XL, and there even the tallest riser is really quite conservative in terms of the total rise that you can get. So yeah, maybe at that point you are really better off looking at an aftermarket solution. But in this particular case, I think it's okay. Also, there are a few options for an integrated computer mount, which for some reason is not included with the bike, and it's kind of a €100 add-on option, which I don't know, they could have just increased the price of the bike by that much and you would get computer mount straight away if you're, well, forced into buying a complete bike anyway. So that's kind of weird. But they also have a rather neat solution for a BTA mount, which bolts from the back here and places your bottle here around, between your arms basically. So that's also quite good. What is not so good are the elbow pads. As usually, again, it's stock bikes. However, this one is quite easy to upgrade. My main gripe with it in the smaller size is that, well, basically you can't push them any closer together than this, which is, well, not a very aerodynamic position. It's around 10 centimeters wider than I would have it, for example. Not ideal. But yeah, as I said, overall, the cockpit for a standard bike is pretty damn good. Also, you have a ton of adjustment in terms of the overall reach, maybe even a bit too much in the case of this small frame, because you will definitely need to cut them. But yeah, it's better to have the option than not. You can see also why the reason why the stack is so low is because, well, the head tube is basically non-essential. I haven't seen a smaller head tube on any bike, basically. As for the complexity and difficulty of building this bike, unfortunately I sorry, I can't really comment on that because it came mostly pre-assembled. We've only done the front end, which isn't too bad in terms of installation. You have this nice big cavity here in the front where you can stuff all the Di2 wires that you need, so that's really quite convenient. Then towards the back we have this really quite large kind of storage compartment, and it's also really quite deep, as you can see. You got that for your gels and nutrition and other stuff you might want to use. Then this Triathlon version of the frame also has the ISO-speed decoupler, which means that inside here there's a pivot, so you can essentially the clamping of the seat post actually flexes inside. You can see that this is a much deeper profile, so you get added comfort and bump absorption in the back like you used to with Treks in the past. I also have to mention the frame job on this particular bike. It's the called I think the Emerald Iris, and it's really rather neat with beautiful green to violet metallic flakes in there, so really quite stunning. And then you got the matte logo and the gloss black here, although I have to say gloss black on the handlebar area is not great because you get tiny micro scratches from use, so you need to polish it from time to time to keep it looking pristine, but otherwise a really neat looking finish. On the down tube you also have this storage compartment where you can stuff an inner tube inside, and then here you have a thread which enables you to thread on a CO2 canister. So this is basically your flat protection kit, and I believe there's a Bontrager multi-tool that fits into here that you can buy from Trek. Again, I can't really see why this isn't included with the bike in the first place, but there you have it. And on top of it we also have an aero bottle, and as far as aero bottles go, I think this is quite a good design. So the cage itself is, well, not too high quality, to be honest. It's pretty flimsy, but the bottle makes up for it. It's a nice usable size, so I believe it's 700 ml, so that's quite rare for an aero bottle. And it also has this nice rubberized finish, so not slippery at all. Can be washed in the dishwasher, which comes in handy, although probably this is not something you want to use for general training, but for events, for the aero benefit, that's pretty cool. And also, if you just put it on there, it's quite a secure hold. There's also a plus, so as you can see, it fills out the main triangle of the bike, and I believe this will probably get you a slight aerodynamic boost as well, although we haven't tested this yet with this particular frame. But yeah, it appears pretty good, matches nicely. And unlike some other brands, it matches nicely with every single frame size, because I believe we have built every single frame size of these, and yeah, it always works. There are some brands which are optimized for a medium, and then on the other ones it doesn't fit as nicely, so kudos for thinking about that. Then if you go to the drivetrain bit, as I said, it's basically Ultegra Di2 throughout, except the brake levers, which are not made in the Ultegra level, so those were Dura-Ace. But the main thing we have changed here is the crank, as you can see. So we really wanted a power meter option here, but I tend to steer people away from power meter pedals, and certainly in this case, you know, short rider, narrow Q factor, that's not where you want to add power meter pedals in. So we have the really nice, kind of my favorite cranks at the moment, Cybre 160mm, 24mm axle, so goes in straight, replaces the Shimano Ultegra crank. And we have, again, to match the needs of the narrow Q factor, we have the Speedplay Aero pedals with the short titanium spindle. In previous videos I've talked about the DLC coating. This is finally it. So here we have a DLC coated titanium spindle, so you can, well, yeah, this is a setup that I really recommend and we sell a lot of, so if you're interested, of course, you can get them in the links mentioned below. So that's the crank part, and yeah, the power meter option, Power to Max NG Eco in this case, not the full-on NG, but yeah, it's a really reliable unit, big battery, extremely long battery life, and good power numbers. So yeah, that's basically all you need to get training. Seat post wise, I forgot to mention that, again, I think you have 3 different versions of seat post. This is a so-called flippable one, so you can have it facing rearward for a slightly more normal offset position, and then if you're really into sitting almost on the handlebar, as is the trend these days for, to me, unknown reasons, then you can flip that and get even closer to sit right on the bottom bracket, and this enables you to do that. For some weird reason, normally all of these bikes come with this saddle. So this is the Bontrager Hilo with the steel rails, and the SLR7, all of them come with that. This particular bike came with the carbon fiber railed version of the saddle, which is probably a shortage or a packaging issue or something, which of course is good for the customer because it's a much more expensive saddle. However, they didn't include the seat post rails for an oval seat post rail. Well, so this is the round version, which means I had to, well, go through our parts bin to fit an identical saddle. As you can see, it's used, so not ideal, but we needed to do this to get the bike going. So I need to order quickly a set of those carbon fiber rails to complete the bike. Yeah, some other notable things. The wheel set, as you can see, it's more of a training wheel set. It's kind of a low end to mid range from Bontrager Eldus Pro 51. Kind of a reasonable shape, relatively wide, tubeless ready, of course, but you know, the depth and the weight is nothing spectacular. However, the biggest upgrade you can probably do to any bike is the set of tires. Again, these Bontragers are kind of meh, not the top options by any means, so we're going to replace this with some high-end Conti rubber, and that will really improve the efficiency of this bike. So on the back, use a 28mm TTTR, set up tubeless, again for that puncture protection, particularly, you know, if you do long triathlons, you need that, maybe even with a Tubolite insert. And then on the front, we're going to use the Aero 111 in 26mm. A lot of people have been asking me about this tire and whether I will use it or not. I think it's a great option. perhaps not for every single use case, but I just find that it's really fitting here. So we all know the aerodynamic claims from Continental. I haven't tested these yet, but if you look at the charts, you see that this mainly works at very high yaw angles, which don't really appear in time trialing at high speeds. However, in road racing and triathlon, they definitely do. So that's where it could give you a boost. And another thing that people fail to mention is this star is claimed to increase the crosswind stability on the front wheel, which makes perfect sense because the aero profile basically aids or controls the vortex shedding you get around the front wheel, and that eliminates kind of the violent jerks that you get on the front. And I just find it very suitable for a use case like this, because in a triathlon, and if you're not so experienced with a time trial bike, then this is definitely something that can help boost your confidence on there. And it's also a slight aero advantage potentially, even though the rolling resistance is more in line with the regular 5000 STR and a bit higher than the TTTR. But it's a very light rider again, so rolling resistance plays a smaller role in that case. So that's why I decided to go for this one. So yeah, that's probably it. I think you will agree that this is a really nicely done and beautiful bike. So I hope the owner will get a lot of success and enjoyment out of it. If you want build in this case or something similar in terms of optimizing in performance, then don't hesitate to reach out to us via the links below. Thanks for watching and see you next time.